Welcome back to Broker's Playbook, everyone. My name is Simeon Papailias, and today I'm going to be interviewing Tim Hudak, the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, which is North America's largest body of real estate with almost 100,000 members. This is going to be an episode we air both to the real estate community and, of course, the general population as well. There's going to be questions and insight brought to the table that's not going to only help you understand where we're at as far as housing affordability, mortgage interest rates, but more importantly, what each of us can do to be a part of the solution, not to continue watching a problem. Buckle in, this is going to be fire. Tim, welcome to Broker's Playbook. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. I don't know what to say, my man. We have so many things to cover today. Welcome to Broker's Playbook.
Yeah, Simeon, thanks for having me back on Broker's Playbook. Great seeing you. And I always want to say, right to the folks watching at home, you do an awesome job. You stay on top of the issues. You care deeply about the profession. You give fantastic advice to people looking to buy and sell and investors. So whenever you call, I'm always honored to be on the show.
And I will say you always do reply to us with not just requests to come on the show, but when we need insight, when we need that opinion coming from the top of the industry, we can rely on you. And I thank you and I appreciate you for that. Tim, the reason I have you back now is we've had an outstanding number of people that have actually asked us to have you on the show.
Uh-oh. Is that good or bad?
It's a good thing. It's
Right.
a really good thing. People are looking to understand. We're in Canada. We're specifically in Ontario. And as I said in the introduction, you lead the biggest real estate association on the planet with nearly 100,000 or more than 100,000 members. The United States, Canada are experiencing an economic climate that people are not used to. They hadn't seen this type of interest rate environment, this type of inflation in years. Housing affordability has been a problem, a chronic problem in Ontario and Canada specifically for some time, but it seems or it feels that it's at the worst it's ever been. Can you speak to housing affordability? Maybe start by defining it, because it's just become the new word, the new reality in Canadian real estate. What have you been working on? Because I know you're a champion of this thing.
Yeah, no, Simeon, I appreciate that. And thanks for your kind words each and every day, right? When my feet hit the floor, when I get up in the morning, my mission is to help realtors, leaders like yourself, help connect more people with a great place to call home. And I know things are more challenging in the market, wherever I'm in Ontario. I'll say what I'm an optimist though. Like there's so much underlying demand. So many young people that did everything right, played by the rules. They got their degree, they got their diploma, they got a decent job, but they can't escape mom and dad's basement to save their lives. We've got immigration coming into our country. We got the bank of mom and dad. Like all the factors are there. If we get government actors rowing in the same direction to help get those keys closer to hand for hardworking families. So what's housing affordability? That's the ability for middle-class families to actually get a place to call home, to raise their kids, their lifelong investment that they may sell to get a move-up home down the road or for their retirement. And the great thing, Simeon, about Canada is every generation had a better shot at owning a home than the one before that. My parents, grandparents, all that until now. I am confident, though, we can reverse it. The ideas are on the table. Happy to talk about those. We just need actors in government, both nationally, locally, and provincially, to be rowing in the same direction. And right now, they're not.
And do you find that the different levels of government are contradicting each other? Are they not on the same page? What do you feel? Where's the disconnect and what is the solution to that specifically?
Yeah. Reason number two, I'm optimistic. Generally, that's true. Like I spent 21 years in politics. I've been with the Real Estate Association now 7.5. In terms of alignment to focus on getting more homes built for rental, for ownership, there's a lot that are on the same playing field in government. Here's the catch. Here's what we got to fix. There are unelected officials running the Bank of Canada, Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and OSFI. They're the regulator banks that every step political people take in one direction, they go 2 steps backward. Let me give you an example. Interest rates. Been way too high, way too long. It took them too long to start moving down, and they got to act faster. They're being overly cautious. Inflation well within the range, and it's put a stranglehold on the dreams of Canadians to own a home. Number 2, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, as you know, Simeon, they were early days. So their job was to actually connect people with a home, to build up our middle class. Veterans coming back from World War II to get them into the housing market. They're rudderless. No CEO, no chair. They're doing nothing to address the housing affordability crisis. Then there's OSFI. That's a regulator of the banks. While we need to encourage more builders to build homes and put more liquidity into mortgage markets, they're strangling it. They're going the opposite direction. Job number 1, we want to get homes built and more homeowners. Make sure those federal agencies are going in the same direction as the elected officials.
So what is the actual disconnect? How can Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation not have leadership or be in sync with when our prime minister, and I don't care which party is in power, etc. That means nothing to me. Policy matters to me. When the prime minister stands up and says he wants to do something about home affordability, there's a lot I don't agree with what's being said. However, he still stands for solving the problem, but yet his own agencies are choking it out. How is that disconnect being viewed by leaders like yourself? Is somebody piping that in?
It makes me mad. It makes me mad. So here's what we got to do. You know, we actually got to grab them by the lapel collars and shake them up and speak out. I'll use the expression growing up in Catholic school and the Catholic community. You got to sometimes question the priest. It's almost like these people, these run these agencies. We think these high priests, they've got access to more information than everybody else, so we can't question them. I say, bull. You got to question them. You got to push them. You got to say, maybe, all right, you've done well. Your kids got houses, but what about all these other people? You have to understand how this is impacting the average person on the street. So not enough people in politics and not enough people in our positions are doing the grab them by the lapels and say, you've been too tight for too long. We got to get going in the same direction as elected officials. We've been doing that. I've been in the media doing that. To his credit, Doug Ford's been doing that. We need more voices, Simeon, saying to the Bank of Canada, saying to OSFI, and saying to Canadian Mortgage and Housing, get your act together.
That's incredible. And I'll speak and I'll expand on a couple things that you just said. You started off talking about interest rates being too high for too long. It took them almost 2 years to figure out that they were too low for too long. And now they're too high for too long. And it just seems that balancing act simply cannot be figured out one way or the other, because we would never be in this place if they had started increasing them when they should have.
Point.
They simply don't have their finger on the pulse. But when we say there's a disconnect, the things that I see from the street level, because I'm a practicing broker, we have a massive practice out of Toronto. We have nearly 50 agents on my team. And my partner and I were looking at the news. This was mid-June, right after they announced the first interest rate cut. To all our listeners from the US, Canada did it first. They lowered the interest by 25 basis points. The US is supposedly following in September. But for those here, we look at our economy, which is, the investor community, the buyers, the sellers, they cannot breathe anymore. The payments have been so high for so long, where every one of their dollars is going into their mortgage payments. The CPI index that came out yesterday, of the 2.8% inflation, which is within the range,
absolutely,
half of it is just interest payment on your mortgage.
Yeah.
So the real inflation is actually 1.3, 1.4. And in the midst of this conversation last June with my business partner, we were talking about news that just came out of the development community, that development charges went up again. We're in a market where housing sales, new construction sales, which is the leader, this is how homes get built. An investor, a retail investor like me and you, are going to invest a down payment with a builder to be able to have a new home built. In 2, 3, 4 years, whenever the home is built, the end user is going to come along and have an option to buy a new home. And they're going to buy that off the investor who led the way, who had faith in their local economy, who wanted to invest in their city to grow, to do so. The investor right now is not investing.
Yeah.
Homes are not being built. I remember you were part of the task force, the Home Affordability Task Force.
Got it.
That put out a number of how many homes need to be built. What was that number?
1.5 million over 10 years, Simeon.
And that's for Ontario.
That's Ontario alone. Yeah, we focus on the province. Trying to think nationwide is probably Ontario's size is probably closer to 3, probably 2.8.
Wonderful. From 1.5 million homes, if I can tell you factually, because this is my industry, I'm connected in it, sales are at a record low. For the year so far, 2 quarters in, we're at just over 5,000 new units sold in the GTA, with no new launches happening in the last 8 months. We have a plan to get to 1.5 million homes over 10 years, but the actual evidence and the actions the government is taking, sure, they set a target. You were part of that task force.
Yep.
They're listening. They say, yes, this sounds great. But their actions are the exact contrary, to the point that in June, they raised development charges again, further punishing the developer and the end user, because that's who's going to ultimately pay for it.
You got it. So job number one, as I said, we got to call out these federal agencies that have been given too much rope. You use the analogy of people got to breathe, right? Like I'll closet thing about Hudak. I'm a big wrestling fan. So there we go. I'll put that out on the airwaves. It's like they put the sleeper hold on, right? The Iron Sheik put the sleeper hold on, knock the other wrestler out. They need time to get on their feet. So what do? You don't put the sleeper hold back on. You get more oxygen in the system. Get interest rates down again. We got to call that stuff out. Number two, we got to make sure that the government officials that started in the right direction. Like I hear what you say, Simeon, but 21, 22, we had the largest number of new builds, both for owned properties and for purpose-built rental we've had in decades. We were on the right track. Then the sleeper hold went on, interest rates went up.
Right.
So we got to make sure that our leaders at all levels don't lose their nerve. Just because housing affordability is not in the same headlines it was a year or so ago, that doesn't mean it's been solved. It's actually worse. So they can't lose their nerves. That's why the province actually needs to go back in the track of capping development charges, at least for affordable middle-class families. They need to advance ideas like using government land to get homes built. Simeon, they did it in New York City. Mayor Bloomberg, 160,000 homes built on city-owned land. They can do that in New York. Imagine what we could do here in the province of Ontario.
Sure.
And also for those people.
And we have tons of government land, tons.
Biggest landowner, right? Biggest landowner, I think, in Ontario is the Ontario government. Number two, the federal government. Probably number three is the cities. Underutilized properties, unused, put them to housing, accelerate those projects. And the government shouldn't build them, work with the private sector to build them. The government should set the deal so they're targeted at first-time home buyers and quality rentals.
That is an incredible idea, and thank you for that. With that, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking, again, industry and looking at our professional standards, looking at how Canada is doing, how Ontario specifically is dealing with some of those challenges our brothers and sisters down south of the border have had to deal with the NAR, lawsuits.
There you go.
In just 2 minutes, we'll be back. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Broker's Playbook. We are here with Tim Hudak, CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, this planet's biggest real estate association. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back, Tim. We just spoke about home affordability. We're going to move this topic to professional standards. You've been with the Ontario Real Estate Association for nearly 8 years. In your tenure, I've known you for over 10 years. I knew you before you were with the Ontario Real Estate Association.
And you still like me.
And I still like you. For those who don't know, this man was a career politician and is now driving the bus, obviously, for one of the biggest industries in our country. But you've made a lot of change. You've actioned from ideation to execution, things that have changed real estate in Ontario. And again, this is the biggest board on the planet. It represents almost 100,000 realtors. I want to discuss a little bit about what drove you to make these changes. I want to specifically talk about TRESA as well, which is the last bill that you passed for real estate that replaced the Real Estate Business Brokers Act, REBA, and it was replaced by TRESA. And it's funny how the timing works. When this passed, it's the same time that south of the border, they had a massive shakeup in the U.S. with the National Association of Realtors getting sued, that going through, the lawsuit going through, and major players paying big money in damages that could have been avoided. And I think the bill that you introduced here, TRESA, is kind of designed to deal with a lot of those topics. Yeah,
it's a great way of looking at it, Simeon, for sure. Like, look, you're kind enough to recognize that. I like to say I'm a recovering politician. I'm on step 10 of the program. But one thing I learned is, as a profession, you need to solve your own problems, because if you don't, and it impacts on consumers, government's going to solve it for you. And the government doesn't use a scalpel; it uses a hammer, right? So you need to take fate in your own hands. And that's why the two top things that we set out at OREA, number one, help get the Canadian dream achieved for more people, more Canadian homeowners. And number two, raising the bar when it comes to professional standards. And we targeted North American leading standards. I know you've got a wide audience of Brokers Playbook with people right across North America. Our goal is to be top of that list and have others follow. We want to make sure the realtor at your side, when you're doing the biggest financial transaction of your life, where you raise your family, for goodness sakes,
that's right,
that realtor has the highest professional standards, code of ethics, best education and training anywhere in North America. And if they don't, Simeon, we got a regulator over here who's going to get the bad actors out of the profession. No more taps on the wrist. Kick people out. We don't want anybody who's breaking the rules anywhere near a real estate deal.
The penalties are the consequence of the realtor's actions are just too significant for a tap on the wrist, and that was going on for far too long. Tell me a little bit about that. How does that all being enforced? How is that working?
So our regulator in Ontario, the Real Estate Council of Ontario, also known as RECO, because of the TRESA legislation you mentioned, now has a lot more tools, making them North American leaders, a greater ability to kick people out altogether, suspend licenses until certain things get done. Fines have been increased because fines reflected a real estate market of the 2000s and not 2024. What I really like to do proactive investigations. So far too often it's somebody has to make a complaint. People might not want to make complaints. They don't want to bother. So RECO can do proactive investigations and start using data to say, okay, we got trouble with this brokerage or this type of transaction or this part of the province, to really go after them. Part of TRESA Phase 3 that we're working on right now is what's called administrative monetary penalties, kind of like traffic tickets. So for lesser offenses, they could give out the ticket, so to speak, and focus the resources on the biggest actors out there. All of that will make our regulator stronger, more nimble, and get bad guys out of the profession who shouldn't be there in the first place, and then focus on building up our standards when it comes to the realtors like yourself and brokers who are very hardworking, dedicated to their clients.
I can't tell you enough how many people are extremely happy with TRESA and this integrity-driven and ethics-driven approach. I know I'm very proud of both yourself, your entire team, and the OREA body in general, because you're driving to get bad actors out of the industry. The general consensus and reputation of the real estate industry has not been the fondest for many, many years. But I personally have witnessed a massive change in the people who work with professionals, how people source their real estate agent at this point in time, because it's not 1960, it's not 1980, it's not 2000. Mm-hmm. Google reviews are one thing, but the fact that you can do a digital dive on someone so quickly and so easily now has changed the industry. Bad actors will be exposed one way or another. A real estate professional at this point is more than somebody who does showings. It's not, I open the door, close the door, and the deal is done. Financing is complex. The options to how to take title, why to take title that way, all the different complexities that have become a part of this modern transaction are limitless.
You got it. And it has become, you mentioned the 2000s, right? It's become more expensive, more complex, right? More legally fraught. And that's why you need to have that experienced realtor at your side when making this transaction. You don't want to leave money on the table. You don't want to set up some kind of failure down the road. So a big part of our job is to continue to raise the bar in professionalism. I think education needs to be more demanding as well, both pre-licensing to get into the system and continuing education, because the world changes fast. But ultimately, anybody who's not up to that standard, they need to find a job somewhere else.
And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I love that. Can you give me your take on what took place in the United States? And do you see that having an impact in Canada? Do you see that is it over? Is it time now that we're going to see a positive change with buyer agents in the U.S.? What's your take on?
Yeah, again, we were further ahead when it comes to consumer protection, the trusted legislation than
specifically disclosure. They were really behind on disclosure.
Yep. Yeah, a big part of TRESA is disclosure, more transparency for the consumer, more transparency in how they interact with their agent. What does multiple representation mean? Can we narrow those areas? So we brought in, new tools, for example, an open offer system where you can share contents of offers. That's brand new for the province of Ontario, a new tool for a realtor or for a seller to use. We brought in designated representation so they know that realtor is going to be there as your agent, not neutral to the deal. These were all changes to, as I said, take on, and as leaders in your business, I mean, have called for some time, to take control of our own profession, to make us North American leaders, not waiting for government to react. What's happened in the States, it's a result of not making those reforms. Having government say, you've not fixed your own issues when it comes to transparency, we're going to fix it for you.
And those mandatory changes have really put a shockwave through the real estate industry down south. But my team and I were in South Carolina last September when they were going through it, and we were there again in April, I believe, for a massive conference, and it was the top of class across the real estate industry were gathered there to share and mind share and really talk about the issues at hand. And the value proposition to the buyer has never been questioned more. So you have tens of thousands of top agents representing, the America that we all know. And like, we're talking massive volume of people, massive volume of transactions. And their number one concern is their value proposition to the buyer. Mm-hmm. And how do they showcase who they are and what they can offer? Am I somebody who's just writing a templated offer?
Right.
Or do I have insight and offer something? What's your take on how a buyer agent can use the tools that their respective body anywhere? What's your advice to your colleagues on how to create value for their agents?
I think we're far too humble in terms of the incredible value that agents on the buyer-seller side, particularly on the buyer side, because you don't get paid unless there's actually a deal. So
that's right.
Sacrifice is incredible. But the advocacy role they play, the role they play in educating, knowing that neighborhood, where a property is heading, what's happening in the backyard, right? Knowing that dead cold, giving the best advice to stay calm in the pocket, and having the strength and the capacity to say to somebody, you know what, this house might look right for you, but I think this one actually looks better, to speak truth when sometimes people don't want to hear that. Those are all the incredible aspects of what a buyer agent does. I think we don't talk about that often enough. And I think organized real estate can play an important role in that, to talk about the value of the realtor. Korea's done a good job of that. I think we can do a bit more when it comes to the buyer agent. And lastly, giving more tools to our realtor members. We brought in personal real estate corporations as part of TRESA. Over 10,000 realtors in Ontario now use that, which helps them smooth out taxes, do planning, reinvest in their businesses. Having the open offer process is another tool for transparency if sellers want to go that way.
And that's also something that can be showcased as expertise, as a new value tool to improve the offer process.
You got it. Absolutely. And then part of TRESA Phase 3 that we're working on right now is to allow specialty certifications. You know how a lawyer will graduate, they'll be called to the bar, and they can practice law anywhere, but they basically say, specialize, be a labor lawyer, a family lawyer, that kind of stuff. So too, we want to see that in real estate. So if you want to say, you're commercial, you want to say that I'm a waterfront specialist, to actually have those designations backed up by a book of business or education, right? So when consumers see that, they know that's actually backed up, and it recognizes the work that realtors do investing in their businesses to develop that kind of specialization.
Well, I can tell you for sure, I am very excited in the prospect of seeing how all this goes for all of us everywhere. But in Ontario, where I practice and where you're my CEO of my association, I'm proud of how far we've come. And I take great pleasure in seeing bad actors get rooted out, and the people who do their job with ethical and moral integrity get rewarded by growing their market share and making our entire industry look great. I'm going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to put the last piece to the Tim Hudak trifecta. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in a second. Welcome back, everyone. I do have Mr. Tim Hudak here, CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. And Tim, I have you here for 5 more minutes. And I wanted to save the best for last. And when I say the best for last, I mean it is a little bit selfish. I want myself and all my brothers and sisters in Ontario to get an understanding of what you're actually working on right now, because I know it's quite exciting. There's a lot of tools coming up for us.
Yeah, you bet. Well, we talked a lot about the advocacy, just helping build more Canadian home builders, homeowners. We talked a bit about how we work with realtors and consumers. Here's what we're doing for realtors. We have their back. We want to use our expertise to help them advance their businesses and do an even better job of working with buyers and sellers. So we have brand new legislation, Trust, we've talked about. So folks watching at home, either in the brokerage through their board, will come in person or virtually Simeon to do a presentation on our standard forms. For any real estate situation, if there's a tricky curveball thrown your way, we've got a form for that. So how to use those forms. What does TRESA mean for day-to-day business practice? So those are available to all realtors through the brokers of the board. Number 2, we've created a new position called Realtor in Residence. This is Ray Ferris, a respected broker, a past president of OREA. Within 24 hours, Ray is answering questions, giving guidance to realtors across our province about how to handle difficult situations and also what TRESA means for them.
And this is from one of the top brokers of this province, actively responding to our questions.
Absolutely. The guy is working, I don't know when he sleeps, but he's answered, I think, about 8,000 questions so far. And he usually gets back to people within 24 hours to help shine a light, because you got to know those answers with your clients right away. It's a tremendous new resource. And recently we launched the Hub. So you can go through OREA.com at standard forums. The Hub is giving guidance on best practices. So, how am I going to work with designated representation? What does it mean to use an open offer process? So very eye level, either in written form or 2-minute videos. Our realtor experts are there to give advice to our members, Ontario's realtors, on how to best implement changes and do a great job for their buyers and sellers.
So one last thing that I want to contribute, go to the Hub, check out these resources. But the open offer process, is something that I believe is going to change the industry. To the realtors out there not understanding what that means, you need to study the tool. You need to understand the process. The days of you getting played against 13 offers, which half of them are ghost offers, fraudulent offers, performed by bad actors that we spoke about earlier, are over. Those days are over. And for those still that believe they can do things of this nature, you're hurting the consumer, you're hurting the industry, and you're putting your personal gain as your guiding star. And those days are simply over. The open offer process, I believe, is going to change the entire continent in the way real estate is done. There's many entrepreneurs working on versions of this.
Sure.
There is a tremendous amount of people paying attention, and I do hope that it really takes a strong footing here in Ontario now, given we have the paperwork to back it.
Well, our goal was to give realtors an additional tool, right? Realtors will go to the wall for their clients. They are very creative in solving problems. They are a service mentality leaders in Canada among professions. We wanted to give them another tool that they could present to their clients to help get that deal done.
What is the best way, Tim, for anybody in real estate to reach out to OREA to see what you're doing? And bottom line is, what can they do about it? Is it write to your MP? Any of these initiatives that we discussed?
For sure.
What is the number one way to take action?
Best way is through our website. All the stuff is available, OREA.com. Also follow us on social media. And you're right, Simeon, we will often launch campaigns where we're trying to get government officials to get more homes built, to cooperate in legislation, to raise the bar. We won recently a 10-day cooling off period on new homes to protect consumers, to level the playing field. We got rid of nosies that shady characters are using to rip off senior citizens by giving them exorbitant bills so they had to pay off when they sold their home with a gun to the head. We've had a lot of achievements, and we call on our members to communicate with our MPPs because they're respected. They're well known in the community. They're active. So sign up at OREA.com and be part of our initiatives as well to help protect your consumers, your buyers and sellers, and create more business getting people into a great place to call home.
Mr. Hudak, thank you so much for being on the show.
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. I always appreciate your insight, and I can't wait to have you again soon.
Good seeing you again, Simeon. You keep up the great work.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. Tim was absolutely incredible. If you have any questions whatsoever as a result of Tim's insight, reach out to community@brokersplaybook.com. Whether you are an industry professional, an investor, a buyer, or a seller, if you want to reach out to Tim and his team, we can do that for you. Again, it's community@brokersplaybook.com.